Hello, folks. Welcome to Factual Indian. Here is our next episode on Factual Story. In one of the most isolated and intolerant wilderness in the world, two strangers sit huddled in a makeshift tent they have built. A 41-year-old man and a 23-year-old woman are freezing and on the verge of death. A snowstorm thrashes their makeshift tent and the wind blasts seem to the pair like nature itself has a hate campaign against them. They are miles away from any town, and what they don't know is that as they sit and wait, the media is saying there is only a little hope the missing pair will be found alive. On the other hand, their families and acquaintances are praying for this pair to return alive. Who are these strangers? Why there is news on media about them? Why their family and friends are hoping them to be alive? Come on, let us see the true story of two strangers that trapped in snow longer. This story starts at the beginning of 1960s. There was a beat movement, a counterculture that enshrined something that would become known as the road trip, with Jack Kerouac's book On the Road, inspiring many young Americans to take off and explore their own country from end to end. And that's just what a young Jewish girl from New York named Helen Claiborne wanted to do. In 1963, she met a 41-year-old Mexican-American amateur pilot by the name of Ralph Flores in San Francisco. He was an aircraft mechanic that hailed from San Francisco, and he also wanted to join the trip. Since both had adventurous mind, they wanted to do this trip by air. The pair agreed to share the expenses of the journey, and off they went on a small single-engine airplane to their first destination, which was the capital of Yukon Territory, Whitehorse, which is the most populated place in that wild part of the world. They had another stop after that, and that was at Fort St. John in British Columbia. It was winter and bitterly cold. Snowstorms raged, and the plane was grounded for 3 days. A small single-engine airplane couldn't hope to fly over such an unforgiving territory in such bad conditions. Nonetheless, with the winter warning still present, the two took off again into the sky. They wanted their next landing would be anything but smooth. The pair flew for hours in strong winds, the plane being tossed around like a dandelion seed in a strong breeze. Flores could hardly see anything with the snow blasting against the plane. He and Claiborne knew they somehow had to get out that storm, so Flores attempted to get above the clouds and out of danger. His plan was to come back down and find the Alaska Highway, which could lead him to the airport. That was the thing, he needed the road to get his bearings because, being an amateur, he didn't quite understand the instrument signals in the aircraft. On top of that, he hadn't even packed emergency supplies on board in case of a crash. There were no real tools, not much in terms of food supplies, nothing to keep someone warm, and not even a gun in case they came up against a rather hungry animal. But they at least had a knife. It was a time of desperation, and Claiborne started to lose her cool. She knew that the pilot was totally lost, but he refused to admit that. Then she suddenly saw a mountainside and some trees, and she knew they were going to crash. She said to herself, "Okay, Helen, here it comes." And it came with a bang. She closed her eyes and just hoped for the best, and when she opened them, she was alive. The plane had landed at the side of a mountain close to the Yukon-British Columbia border. He had a broken arm and he had some broken ribs and a fractured jaw. There was nothing but mountains and trees around, and snow covered everything. Just walking around was an effort because the temperature around at times would go down to minus 45 degrees Celsius. They huddled in the wreckage of the plane to escape the blistering cold. So they built a makeshift tent. As days went by, search parties flew over the skies and looked for the pair, but it was incredibly difficult to see anything in between the trees when everything is covered with snow. They literally had nothing to eat after they finished off some cans of sardines, tuna, fruits and some crackers they had brought. There were no supplies at all after that, and they were only 10 days in. The one important thing that they could do to survive was to melt snow for water. They had a box of matches and so could make a fire. With both of them in pain from their injuries and without the equipment to hunt, they just sat and waited and starve. Day by day, the kilos came off as their bodies burned their own for reserves. Flores did try and make everything that looked like a slingshot, but it was useless, and he soon gave up on the idea of hunting rabbits. They did have another thing though, and in a way you might call that an emergency supply for the religious mind. So they started praying God. Each day they heard planes rumbling overhead, and each day Claiborne continued her prayers. Weeks now passed and they have made a discovery. They found toothpaste and that suddenly started looking tasty. Each day they squeezed the tube and gratefully swallowed the minty cream. They knew it wasn't really food, but it was at least something to put in their mouths. They also had chewing gums and they chewed that for weeks on end. Things got desperate after a few weeks, and while they could at least keep themselves a little bit with insulation they had made out of the clothes and cushions, Claiborne got serious frostbite in her foot. She could now hardly move at all. Flores then told Claiborne that since he could walk, he could go and try and find civilization. He walked off in the woods, leaving her behind to her own thoughts. She decided to write about what happened, but soon gave up on that when it started to sound like an epitaph. She wasn't ready to sign off just yet. 8 days later, Flores came back. He told his dying companion that he had at least found what looked like a clearing, and so humans must have been there.
There was also much more chance of someone seeing them from the sky once they were away from all the trees. They had to walk there and make a shack of some sort. It took hours to get there. Claiborne's foot was badly infected now, and the pain of walking was unbearable. As they got closer to the clearing, they had a noise like humming in the distance. Flores went in search of that noise and then returned sometime later. He told Claiborne he found a frozen pond and that he had written SOS in it, and also etched the shape of an arrow that pointed to where they were. Under his snowshoes he had made out of a tree bark. He told Claiborne he would go out again with a mirror and catch the sight of a pilot. She didn't want to be alone again, but he assured her it was the only option now. It was day 47 of their suffering. And now we introduce to you a man of wild, Charles Hamilton. He was out of in his plane trying to spot animals to hunt. He had a good eye for that kind of a thing. He spotted no animals that day, but he could see SOS written into what looked like a frozen pond. He didn't immediately think about the missing plane. That had been weeks ago, and it wasn't something that was still on his mind. In fact, he thought the remark must have been left by a trapper, seeing as trappers did sometimes find themselves in difficulty in the wild. At the same time, Claiborne had seen the plane in the sky. She made a fire and frantically threw green pine on it. Black smoke gushed into the sky. Surely someone would see that, she thought. She was now in tears, full of desperate joy, ignoring the pain in her foot. Flores was out in the woods trying to use that mirror to flash sunlight back at the plane. Hamilton actually had to turn away from the black smoke since it was thick and heavy. But it was then he saw a man standing with a mirror in his hand. Hamilton found a place to set down the plane near a cabin on an airport lake. He was about 10 kilometers away from the place. He informed trappers. Trappers were working at this cabin, and that is the pair had heard. The trappers had been cutting firewood with a chainsaw. All these men got together with their dogs and set off to find the man with the mirror. Because of the smoke, Claiborne hadn't ate easy. Hamilton then left the trappers and said he would investigate from the sky again, but now that fire had died down. When he looked at where the fire had been, he could just make out a thing. He then made a radio call and said, "I think I found the lost people." Night was now falling, and so Hamilton returned home, hoping the trappers had found those people. Radio called him all night long, but he couldn't sleep anyway, thinking about the poor souls along the way. At this point, no one knew if there was just one survivor or two, since only the man with the mirror had been seen. Hamilton only guessed the woman was the source of the fire. The trappers actually did find Flores that night, but Claiborne waited the whole night alone at the shelter. It was now pitch black and the rescue would have to wait until morning. But Hamilton flew off before dawn and landed a couple of miles from where the tent was. One day he walked in, and about 1 hour later, Clavin saw a hulk of a man striding towards him. When he met her, she embraced him and cried and kissed his grizzled cheek. The brave woman said she would walk out even with the terribly infected, frostbitten foot, but Hamilton refused and carried her. When Clavin was finally taken to the hospital, the doctor said she wouldn't have lasted one more night. If they had stayed another one night, that SOS in that lake would have been covered. They were discovered in the nick of time. When Clavin was well enough, she met with a host of reporters to whom she exclaimed, "Hey, I'm alive." Clavin soon went back to Brooklyn and Flores went to his family in California. The story ends with the moral that if we don't easily give up, we can achieve anything in our life.
I kinda like you.
Okay, I think this story would have inspired you a lot. Let us see in another video. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe.